It was one of those rare moments when everything feels perfectly still, yet you know something's not right. It was a beautiful day, the kind where the sun kisses your skin without burning, and the birds sing louder than usual. Maybe they were trying to tell me something. I was standing in the kitchen, watching my daughter, Lily, move around with excitement. She was a bundle of nerves, humming to herself as she sifted through wedding magazines and her laptop, organizing details for her big day. It was all happening so fast, the dresses, the flowers, the cake, the caterers, and then there was her. The wedding planner, I should have known. But no, I didn't know yet. I'd had my suspicions when Lily mentioned her. "Mom, I've hired a planner for the wedding. She's amazing. You're going to love her," she had said, her voice laced with excitement. Lily's always been like that, optimistic, full of faith in people. But as a mother, there's always that voice in the back of your mind, a kind of radar, that tells you to be cautious. I didn't question it then, though. I just smiled, nodded, and agreed. But here I was, standing in my kitchen, my pulse quickening as I heard the name again. "Auntie May," my daughter said, "the planner will be here in a minute." I turned around, half expecting to see the same woman I'd seen in Lily's photos, a professional, sharp, and well-dressed. But when I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. There she was, Maggie. The same woman who had torn apart my life 20 years ago. The same woman who had been my husband's mistress, the one who, when she entered our world, became the reason my marriage crumbled to dust. The woman I had spent years trying to forget. And now, she was standing in front of me, her warm smile plastered on her face, holding a clipboard like it was some kind of badge of honor. "Maggie," I said, my voice almost a whisper, feeling the blood rush from my face. I could feel the familiar tightness in my chest, like I was suffocating. "Maggie," I said again, a little louder this time. "What? What are you doing here?" "Oh, Auntie May, you look amazing," she cooed, stepping toward me as if we were old friends. She extended her arms as if to hug me. The nerve of her! I stepped back instinctively, caught between disbelief and the burning urge to throw her out. Lily, oblivious to the history between us, stood behind Maggie, smiling brightly. "Mom, this is Maggie. She's the best. She's going to help us make everything perfect." I stood frozen, caught in a moment where the world didn't seem real. My head was spinning. Maggie, the woman who had destroyed my marriage, was here, at my daughter's wedding, planning the most important day of her life. The irony was cruel. I tried to smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "I didn't know you were the one planning Lily's wedding." Maggie's smile faltered for just a second before she quickly recovered. "Of course I am. Lily's been raving about how much she admires me. She knows I can take this wedding to the next level." Lily smiled so proudly, and all I could do was nod, my mind racing, trying to keep up. "Of course," I said. "I'm sure you'll do a wonderful job." But my voice felt hollow, strained. Every part of me wanted to scream, but I couldn't. As Maggie went on about floral arrangements, cake designs, and the color scheme, I stood there, struggling to maintain composure. I could hear her voice, but it was like everything was happening in slow motion. She was so confident, so at ease in my home, in my space, and I was a stranger to her, just a bystander to the chaos she'd left in her wake all those years ago. But what hit me hardest, what caught me off guard the most, was how easily she slipped back into my life. I could see it, the way she smiled, the way she spoke, as if nothing had ever happened. She had no shame, no guilt. The woman who had once destroyed my family was now orchestrating the celebration of my daughter's love. "Mom," Lily said, tugging at my sleeve, pulling me out of my daze. "Mom, are you okay?" I nodded, my throat thick with emotion. I didn't want Lily to know, didn't want to burden her with the ugly past. Not on her wedding day. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm fine," I lied. Just tired. It's a lot to take in, that's all. I could feel Maggie's eyes on me, and I knew she could tell I wasn't fine. But I wasn't about to let her see me break. "Don't worry, Auntie May," she said with that too sweet tone. "We'll take care of everything. You just sit back and enjoy the ride. After all, it's your daughter's big day." I wanted to tell her that she didn't deserve to be here, that she had no right to be anywhere near this event. But the words wouldn't come. I swallowed them down, the bitterness catching in my throat. As she moved around the house discussing logistics with Lily, I retreated to the back room. The kitchen door clicked softly behind me as I closed it, needing space. I could feel my heart hammering against my chest. What was I supposed to do now? I thought about my ex-husband, Tom, who was probably somewhere, clueless about the woman he had once loved. How could he have let this happen? How could I have been so blind? And now I was forced to face her again, in my own home, planning my daughter's wedding. I stood there, my hands shaking, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. What was I going to do? I stood in the back room, my mind racing in circles. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Maggie, walking around my house, acting like she belonged there. The woman who had been the cause of all the heartbreak, the long nights spent crying in the empty bed after Tom left. I could still feel the sting of those days, the cold emptiness where my marriage used to be. It had been years, 2 decades to be exact, but the pain had never really left me. It just faded into the background, tucked away beneath the surface. But now it was all coming back. And I didn't know what to do with it. I could hear Lily's voice from the other room, talking to Maggie with the same cheerful tone she always had, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. It was maddening. Every word felt like a dagger to my heart, each smile from Maggie a reminder of the life I'd lost. I sat down on the old armchair in the corner of the room, the fabric worn from years of use. The ticking of the wall clock echoed in the silence, each tick a reminder of how much time had passed, how much hadn't changed. My fingers tightened around the armrests as I tried to steady my breathing. I can't let this get to me, I told myself. Not today. But then I thought about Lily, my beautiful, strong, independent daughter, and the life she was about to build with the man she loved. She deserved a day free of the shadows of the past. She deserved to have her wedding day be perfect, unmarred by the ghosts of her father's mistakes. Yet here was Maggie, the very woman who had played a part in tearing my life apart, now planning the most important day of my daughter's life. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room as the thoughts began to pile up. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How dare she? The nerve of Maggie, showing up like nothing had happened, like she hadn't destroyed everything I had worked so hard to build, and Tom, my ex-husband. He had been the one to betray me, to abandon our family. He'd walked out the door without a second thought, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I had fought for years to move on, to rebuild myself, but every time I thought I was past it, someone would come along and tear open those old wounds. I couldn't let Maggie get away with it. I couldn't just pretend everything was fine, but I also couldn't ruin Lily's big day. The last thing I wanted was to be the one who cast a shadow over her happiness. I rubbed my temples, trying to calm the storm inside. What would Auntie May do? That thought stopped me in my tracks. Auntie May, my mother's sister, had always been the pillar of strength in our family. She was a woman who had weathered more storms than anyone I knew, yet she never let her emotions get the best of her. She taught me how to be patient, how to choose my battles, how to find peace amidst chaos. Peace, I thought. Maybe that's what I needed. Peace, not revenge. But the more I tried to convince myself, the more the anger bubbled up. What would Auntie May do? Maybe Auntie May would have let it go. Maybe she would have been able to look Maggie in the eye and move on with grace. But I wasn't Auntie May. I was me. And I was furious. As I stood there lost in my thoughts, I heard a soft knock on the door. Lily's voice called out from the other side. "Mom, are you okay?" Maggie and I were thinking about going over some of the details in the backyard. "Want to join us?" The sweet innocence in her voice broke something in me. I closed my eyes, fighting the tears that threatened to spill over. I didn't want Lily to see me like this. I didn't want her to know that the woman planning her wedding was the same one who had once shattered our family. "I'll be right out." "Sweetheart," I called back, my voice betraying the calm I was desperately trying to maintain. Taking a deep breath, I wiped my eyes and stepped into the hallway, forcing a smile onto my face. When I walked into the living room, I found Maggie sitting with Lily, flipping through a wedding magazine. She looked up when I entered, her smile as wide as ever. "Everything's coming together so perfectly, Auntie May," Maggie exclaimed, as if nothing had happened between us. I forced another smile, nodding in agreement. "I'm sure it will be beautiful," I said, my voice flat. Lily beamed at both of us. "I'm so glad you're getting along. This is going to be the best day of my life, the best day of her life," I thought bitterly. But as I looked at my daughter, I realized something important. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about Maggie or Tom or the past. It was about Lily. And if there was one thing I could do right, it was to give her the wedding she deserved, free from the pain of my history. "Let's go over the details," I said, my voice steady now. I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince them or myself, but I didn't care. All I knew was that for Lily, I had to make this work. For her, I would bury the past, at least for one day. Maggie stood up with a flourish, clipboard in hand, her movement so confident, so sure of herself. She looked like she belonged there, like she was meant to be here. But deep down, I knew something that she didn't. This was my daughter's day, and she wouldn't ruin it. No matter what. The next few days were a blur. Maggie seemed to have taken over every aspect of the wedding planning. She had her fingers in every pie, making decisions about the catering, the flowers, the seating arrangements, the music. It was as if she had forgotten that this wasn't her wedding. It was Lily's. But somehow, Maggie had inserted herself into the center of it all. And Lily, my sweet daughter, was too in love with the idea of the perfect wedding to notice. I tried my best to keep my distance, but there was no avoiding her. Maggie was everywhere, in the kitchen, in the living room, going over guest lists, approving the floral arrangements, making calls to vendors. Every time I walked into a room, there she was, smooth, collected, and completely at ease. Like she owned the place, and every time I saw her, a knot tightened in my chest. I could still feel the resentment in my bones, that raw, unhealed wound. I'd tried to forgive, tried to forget, but being around her was like opening an old scar. I couldn't help but wonder, did she know how much damage she had caused? Did she ever think about the wreckage she'd left in her wake? I was sitting on the porch one evening, nursing a cup of tea, when my ex-husband Tom called. The sound of his name on the screen of my phone sent a jolt through me, but I didn't hesitate to pick up. After all, we had to keep things civil for Lily. "May," his voice came through, low and familiar, like it had always been. "I heard from Lily that Maggie's been doing a lot of the wedding planning. I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing with everything." "Fine," I said, though I knew he could hear the tightness in my voice. I wasn't sure why I was still pretending to be civil with him. He didn't deserve my kindness, not after everything he'd done. "I know things haven't been easy between us," Tom continued, his voice soft. "But I hope you're not holding any of that against Maggie. She's just doing her job, May. She wants to help." "Help?" I felt the heat rise in my chest again. Help. Maggie had helped destroy my family, helped tear apart a marriage that had once meant everything to me. "I'm not holding anything against her." "Tom," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, even though I could feel the tears welling up. "She's doing what she does. She always does." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I knew he could feel the tension. But he pressed on. "I hope you can find it in yourself to be civil. For Lily's sake." "This is her big day, May. For Lily's sake." The words echoed in my mind, making me pause. Was that it? Was I doing all of this for her? I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. Maybe it was time to stop fighting, stop clinging to the past, and just focus on Lily. "I'll try," I said, the words coming out softer now. "But I'm not making any promises, Tom. You should have thought about that a long time ago." I ended the call without waiting for his response, setting the phone down on the table beside me. I stared out at the quiet backyard, the garden blooming with flowers that Lily had picked out herself. It was a peaceful scene, but it didn't calm the storm inside me. Later that evening, Lily came to me, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom, we've decided on the invitations. Maggie helped me pick the perfect design." "You'll love it." I forced a smile, nodding. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." But inside I was boiling. I couldn't do this much longer. Every decision Maggie made felt like a slap in the face. Every time she spoke, I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could act like she hadn't torn our family apart. But I kept it all in. I kept it buried. The day of the wedding rehearsal came, and everything was finally coming together. The decorations were perfect, the flowers in full bloom, the guests arriving, their faces full of joy. And there she was again, Maggie, walking around with that same confident air, directing everyone, making sure everything was in place. I watched her from a distance, my hands trembling as I clutched my dress. She looked so at home, so comfortable, in control, and I hated her for it. The rehearsal dinner was a quiet affair, intimate, just close family and a few friends. I sat at the table feeling like an outsider in my own life. Lily sat beside me, her smile so wide, so bright. She was on top of the world, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this moment had been stolen from me. By Maggie, by Tom, by everyone who had caused me pain. Maggie was there, of course, mingling with guests, laughing, her voice ringing out above the others. And I watched, unable to tear my eyes away from her. I was trying to hold it together, but I could feel the bitterness creeping up again. At one point, as the evening wore on and the clinking of glasses filled the air, Maggie approached me. She sat down beside me, her eyes warm, like we were old friends. "Auntie May," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, "I just want you to know how much it means to me that you're here. I know things between us have been complicated, but I want you to know I really want the best for Lily." The words stung like a slap I couldn't block. "Do you?" I said before I could stop myself. "Because it seems to me that you've always wanted what was mine." Maggie's smile faltered just slightly, and I saw the briefest flicker of something, guilt, before she quickly masked it with her usual charm. "I'm just doing my job, May," she said smoothly, leaning back in her chair. "And I'm doing it for Lily, that's all." I clenched my fists under the table, fighting the urge to say something I would regret. Instead, I just nodded, forcing a smile onto my face. As the evening went on, I found myself growing more and more distant, my thoughts consumed by everything Maggie had taken from me. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever happened at the wedding, I wouldn't let Maggie win. She would never have what I had, the love of a mother. And that was something no wedding planner, no affair, no betrayal could ever take away from me. The wedding day arrived like a whirlwind. The early morning was full of quiet chaos. Flowers being arranged, last-minute alterations to the cake, hairstylists working in every corner of the house. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that felt electric, like the world was holding its breath. It should have been a day of celebration, a day of joy, but for me, it was a day laced with unease. I was standing in the bedroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror, adjusting my dress for what felt like the 100th time. My hands trembled slightly as I smoothed the fabric down, but it wasn't nerves. It was everything else, the pain, the anger, the memories. The wedding was supposed to be about Lily, but here I was, struggling to keep my emotions in check for the sake of a celebration I wasn't sure I could even attend without confronting the past. I heard a knock at the door, followed by Lily's voice. "Mom, are you ready? Everyone's waiting." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm coming," I called back, trying to sound as composed as possible. When I opened the door, I was met with Lily's beaming smile. She looked beautiful, radiating a glow that only comes from pure, unbridled happiness. Her hair was done perfectly, her makeup soft, and she wore the dress with a grace that made my heart swell with pride. She looked like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale, the embodiment of everything I had ever wanted for her. "You look amazing," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thanks." "Mom," she replied, pulling me into a hug. "You're going to make me cry." I held her for a moment longer than I should have, breathing in the sweet scent of her perfume, taking in the weight of the moment. This is her day, I reminded myself. And it was her day, not mine. It wasn't about the past. It wasn't about me. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered into her hair. "This is your moment, and I want you to enjoy every second of it." She pulled back and looked at me, her expression soft. "I know, Mom. I just want everything to be perfect." She smiled brightly. "And it will be." I nodded, though inside I felt far from certain. The ceremony was held in the garden, beneath the canopy of trees that had watched over our family for years. The air was crisp, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves overhead, as if nature itself was holding its breath along with the rest of us. Guests began to take their seats, and I stood at the front, watching Lily walk down the aisle, her arm linked with her father's. Tom looked so proud, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, but I couldn't bring myself to share his joy. I just couldn't. As I stood there, my gaze shifted toward Maggie, who was standing at the back of the ceremony, clipboard in hand, looking every bit the part of a wedding planner. She was impeccably dressed, her blonde hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders, her eyes focused intently on every detail, making sure nothing was amiss. I hated that she was here. But more than that, I hated the control she had over this day, over Lily's day. She didn't deserve to be in this moment. She had no right to be a part of this, our moment. But as I watched Lily move closer to the altar, my anger started to settle. I had to focus on her, on the beauty of the day. I couldn't let my past with Maggie ruin what should have been the happiest day of my daughter's life. The ceremony went by in a blur. The vows, the exchange of rings, the moment when Lily and her fiancé kissed, sealing their promises to one another. It was perfect, flawless in its simplicity. And yet I stood there, a tightness in my chest that refused to loosen, my mind constantly returning to Maggie, to Tom, to the shattered remnants of my own heart. As the guests mingled after the ceremony, I stood off to the side holding a glass of wine in my hand, watching my daughter and her new husband dance, lost in their own little world. They looked so happy, so carefree. I envied them in a way. Envied the innocence of their love, the way it hadn't been tainted by the betrayals I had endured. Maggie, of course, was everywhere. She was coordinating, directing, making sure everyone was where they needed to be. Her presence loomed over everything, and I couldn't escape it. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to ask her what she was doing here, why she had to keep inserting herself into my family's life. But I knew that would only make things worse. This wasn't the time. I had to be strong for Lily, for the sake of this day. But just as I thought I could escape, I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. I turned around to find Maggie standing there, smiling in that way that made my skin crawl. "Auntie May," she said, her voice too sweet, too rehearsed. I just wanted to thank you again for being so gracious today. I know things have been complicated, but I'm so glad we're able to share this moment together. I didn't trust myself to speak. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the familiar knot tightening in my throat. But I swallowed it down and forced a smile, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. "Of course," I said, my voice steady but cold. "It's all for Lily after all." Maggie's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered, as she always did. "Yes, of course," she said, her eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite place. "She's lucky to have you," I didn't respond. Instead, I turned my attention to the dance floor, watching as Lily and her husband swirled around the space. They were lost in each other, just as it should be. But even then my heart ached. It ached for the love I had lost, for the life I had lost, and it ached for what Maggie had taken from me. As the evening wore on, the reception started to wind down, and the guests gathered for the final toast. It was time for speeches, for heartfelt words to be shared. I knew this was my moment, my last chance to say something, to make my mark on this day. When Lily stood up to speak, I felt a pang of pride. My daughter was so poised, so beautiful, and she had the kind of love I had always dreamed of for her. She took the microphone, her eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It means so much to us," she said, her voice steady but soft. "And I just want to thank my mom for everything she's done for me, for always being there. You're the reason I believe in love, in family." The words hit me like a wave, and for a moment, I was lost in them. I could feel the tears stinging my eyes, but I blinked them away. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know how much of that love had been built on lies, on pain. But as I looked at her, standing there in the glow of the spotlight, all I could feel was pride. "I love you." "Mom," Lily finished, and then she raised her glass, her smile so bright, so innocent. "To family." "To family," I echoed, my voice thick with emotion. As I raised my glass, I saw Maggie out of the corner of my eye. She was watching me, her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she knew something I didn't. But it was too late for that. For Lily's sake, I let it all go. I raised my glass high, willing myself to forget everything except the love in this moment. The evening began to blur into one long, shimmering memory of laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of conversation. The music played in the background, the soft flicker of candlelight reflected in the eyes of the guests. The air was warm, almost too warm, but the night carried with it an intimacy, a closeness that made everything feel both fleeting and eternal. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to simply be a part of it. I didn't think about Maggie, about Tom, about the past. I focused on Lily, on the love she shared with her new husband, on the joy in her eyes. And yet, there was always that nagging feeling, that sense that something was unfinished. Something was still unresolved. I could feel it tugging at the back of my mind, threatening to pull me back into the shadows of my own heartache. The night went on, and I found myself lost in the festivities. I danced with Lily, laughing, spinning her around in circles as if we were both young again. I shared a drink with a few old friends, chatted about life, about the years that had gone by. It almost felt normal. It almost felt like I could leave the past behind me for good. But then came the toast. Maggie had been moving around, greeting people, making sure everything was going smoothly, like she was the one being celebrated. It grated on me, but I did my best to ignore it. After all, this was supposed to be Lily's night. I had to remind myself of that with every breath I took. The reception was winding down, and the time for speeches arrived. Lily had already given her heartfelt toast, thanking everyone who had been part of her journey. And then, out of nowhere, Maggie stepped up to the microphone, her eyes glinting under the soft lights. "I just want to say a few words," she began, her voice smooth, rehearsed. As the wedding planner, of course, I've had the privilege of working with Lily and her family, and I've come to know just how strong and loving they are. But what I've seen most of all is the love between Lily and her new husband, Thomas. It's a beautiful thing, really. I felt a tightness in my chest as Maggie continued speaking, her words almost a soft melody, soothing, yet with a hint of something else that I couldn't quite place. She glanced at me, her eyes flickering with something almost triumphant. "We all wish them a lifetime of happiness, don't we?" she continued, smiling sweetly at the crowd. The guests raised their glasses, cheering in agreement. "But there's someone else here who deserves a special thank you. A woman who has shaped Lily into the wonderful person she is today. A woman who has shown us what true love and strength really look like." I blinked, trying to keep my composure, but I could feel my heart pounding. My palms were clammy, my stomach tightening. I looked over at Lily, who was beaming with pride, unaware of the undercurrent of tension that had shifted in the room. Maggie's gaze fixed on me, and for a moment I saw something cold in her eyes. "Is this really happening?" I thought. "Does she really think she can do this?" "To Auntie May," Maggie said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that made my skin crawl. "For everything you've done for your daughter. For always being there, even when it's not easy. You're the kind of mother we all wish we had, and I'm so grateful for the love and support you've given me personally." There it was. The thinly veiled insult buried beneath her words. The jab, the reminder of everything she had taken. The very woman who had destroyed my marriage, who had torn my family apart, was standing here in front of everyone, asking for my gratitude. The room seemed to freeze around me. The clinking of glasses stopped. People's eyes were on me, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something, anything, but nothing came out. I was trapped in this moment, trapped in this lie, forced to play along. To smile and nod while the woman who had shattered my world stood there, basking in the applause. Lily looked at me, her smile still so bright, unaware of the war raging inside me. "Mom, you're so loved," she said, her voice full of warmth. I forced a smile, my lips trembling. "Thank you, Maggie," I said, my voice betraying me. It was all I could manage. Maggie smiled back, a look of satisfaction passing over her face, before she turned away to rejoin the guests. I felt like I had just been hit by a freight train. My legs felt weak, my chest tight. I had to get out of there. I needed to breathe. I excused myself from the table, walking out of the reception hall, stepping into the cool night air. The world outside was quiet, peaceful. The distant sounds of the celebration faded behind me as I leaned against the railing of the porch. Taking deep, shaky breaths, I closed my eyes, trying to steady my racing heart, but the memories, they were flooding back. The affair, the lies, the betrayal, and here she was, standing at the center of everything, acting as though she hadn't destroyed my life. Acting as though she deserved to be here. The anger surged again, sharper this time. How dare she? But just as quickly, a voice inside me pushed back. No, not today. Not here. I took another deep breath, letting the cool air fill my lungs. This was it. This was the moment where I had to choose. I could either let Maggie's presence poison this day, let her have the last word, or I could rise above it. I could find peace for myself, for Lily. I wasn't going to let her ruin this day. I wasn't going to let the past steal my daughter's happiness. Not today. The sound of footsteps broke my reverie, and I turned to see Lily standing there, her eyes wide with concern. "Mom, are you okay? You look upset." I smiled softly at her, forcing the tears back. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just needed a moment to breathe," she nodded, her face softening with understanding. "I know it's a lot, but you've been amazing today. I love you so much." "I love you too, darling," I said, my voice thick. "You're my heart. Don't ever forget that." Lily hugged me tightly, and for a moment, the weight of everything melted away. All that mattered was this moment. Her love, her happiness, and I would do whatever it took to protect that. I knew what I had to do. I was done letting the past control me, done letting Maggie or anyone else dictate how I felt. I would hold my head high. I would rise above this. I took my daughter's hand and walked back inside, ready to face whatever came next, because I knew that at the end of the day, this was Lily's story, not mine. And no one, not even Maggie, could take that away from me. The night was drawing to a close, the reception winding down as the last of the guests began to trickle out. The music had softened, and the laughter had turned into quiet murmurs. The glow of the candles flickered softly in the corners of the room, casting a gentle light on the faces of the people who had come to celebrate Lily's wedding. I stood by the door, greeting the last few guests as they left, watching their faces lit by the soft glow of the chandeliers. I could feel the weight of the day bearing down on me. But it wasn't the exhaustion of physical labor. No, it was something deeper, something I hadn't expected to feel. The way Maggie had stood up and praised me earlier, the sharp edge of her words buried beneath her too sweet tone, had left a bruise. She had stirred up everything I had buried over the years, and I hadn't expected that it would cut so deeply. I thought I was done with all of it. I thought I had buried my resentment, my anger, and my pain under the rubble of time. But here it was, rising up again, like a fire waiting to burn. I had managed to keep my composure, to act like everything was fine, but it felt like the walls were starting to crack. Maggie had tried to take control of everything today. It was subtle at first, those small moments when she inserted herself into conversations about the wedding, those comments about how things should be done. I'd told myself that I would rise above it for Lily's sake, but the truth was, every time I let Maggie get away with it, I felt like I was losing a little piece of myself. I walked outside, into the cool night air, needing a moment to gather my thoughts. The wedding was over. The day had been beautiful, everything Lily had dreamed of. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had let something go unchecked, that I had allowed something to fester. The backyard was quiet, bathed in the soft light of the moon. I stood there, leaning against the stone wall, listening to the distant sounds of crickets chirping. It was peaceful here, and for a moment I felt like I could breathe again. But then I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Maggie. "Auntie May," she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond right away, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to talk to her, not now, not ever again. But something inside me told me that I had to face this, for the sake of my own peace. I turned to face her, my eyes narrowing slightly as I took her in. She stood there, her face calm, her expression unreadable. She wasn't smiling now, but there was still that same air of superiority, like she knew something I didn't. "I'm sorry if I upset you earlier," she began, her voice low. "That wasn't my intention. I just wanted to make sure Lily knew how much I appreciated everything she's done. And, well, you've been so supportive of her. I wanted to acknowledge that." I felt a flash of anger, the words I had kept bottled up all day rising to the surface. "You didn't have to do that," I said, my voice tight. "You didn't have to make me the center of attention today. You didn't have to use Lily's wedding to remind me of everything you took from me." Maggie's face flickered with something, surprise, maybe, or guilt, but she quickly masked it. "I didn't mean it like that, May. I'm just trying to help." "Help?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been helping for years, Maggie. You've been helping yourself to everything I had, my marriage, my family, my life. And now you're here, in my home, planning my daughter's wedding. Planning it. Do you think you have the right?" Her eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her carefully constructed facade. "I didn't know," I interrupted, my voice shaking now. You didn't ruin my life. You didn't destroy everything I had. You didn't take my dignity and make me question everything I thought I knew. You didn't come into my house and act like nothing ever happened, like I was supposed to forgive you and pretend that we were all just fine. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. But it was hard, so hard. Lily deserves more than that. She deserves a wedding free of all the lies, all the betrayal. She deserves to have this day without you in the middle of it, reminding me of everything I've had to bury. For a moment, Maggie stood there, silent. Her eyes shifted, and I saw the faintest flicker of regret in them, like she was processing what I had said. But then she spoke. I know I can't change the past, May, she said quietly, but I've tried to make things right. For Lily, for you. I couldn't help the bitterness that slipped out. You've tried? Is that what you call this? Trying? By showing up, by acting like you're some kind of savior? You've done nothing but feed your own ego, Maggie. You think this wedding is some kind of redemption for you, but it's not. Her face tightened, and I could see the tension in her jaw, but she didn't argue. For the first time in years, I didn't see that smirk on her face, that look of superiority. I saw something else, something human, something vulnerable. I know I can't fix everything, she said softly. I know I've hurt you, and I know I can never make up for what I did. But I really did want to make sure this wedding was perfect. For Lily, because she deserves that. I looked at her for a long moment, studying her face, the cracks in her mask. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell her how much she had ruined my life, how much pain she had caused. But then I remembered Lily, my daughter, my love, my reason for being here. I took a deep breath, letting it all go. For Lily, for myself. I'll never forgive you for what you did, I said, my voice low but steady. But I'm not going to let it destroy this day. Not for her. Not for you? Maggie nodded, her eyes downcast, and for a moment, the tension between us seemed to fade. We stood there in silence for a few seconds, two women connected by the same history, bound by something neither of us could change. I think you're right, Maggie said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. This day isn't about me. It's about Lily, and I'm going to step back. I nodded, and for the first time, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Maggie didn't need to redeem herself. She didn't need to apologize. The truth was, I was the one who needed to let go. Thank you, I said, my voice softer now, for stepping back. That's all I needed. As she turned to walk away, I watched her go, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, closure. It wasn't a grand, dramatic moment. It wasn't a huge revelation. But in that moment, I understood something important. Peace wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making someone else pay for the past. It was about moving forward, and I was ready to do that. For me, for Lily. The rest of the evening went by in a blur, but there was a difference this time. The air had shifted. The tension that had been hanging over me all day, thick and suffocating, had started to dissolve. It wasn't that the past was gone, or that everything had magically healed, but there was a quiet peace now. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about releasing the weight of it all. For my daughter, for myself, for the life that still awaited me beyond this day. I watched Lily, radiant in her happiness, spinning around the dance floor in her husband's arms, their faces glowing with love. The world seemed to stop for them in that moment, and I couldn't help but smile. This was the day she had dreamed of. And despite everything that had happened, despite the scars that I would carry with me for the rest of my life, she deserved to have this happiness. She deserved the kind of love that wasn't tainted by betrayal or hurt. I stood off to the side, my hands clasped together, watching her. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own life. I felt like I was a part of something beautiful, something worth fighting for. A hand on my shoulder broke my reverie, and I turned to see my sister, Grace, standing beside me. She gave me a soft smile, her eyes full of understanding. "You okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. I nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "Yeah, I'm okay." Grace raised an eyebrow. "Just okay?" I sighed and shook my head. "More than okay. I'm proud of her, Grace. I'm proud of my daughter. I never thought I'd see this day, not after everything, not after what happened." Grace gave me a warm, knowing smile. "It's not about the past, May. It's about what you've built now, what you've made for Lily. And that's something beautiful." I looked back at Lily, who was laughing, her head thrown back in pure joy, surrounded by her friends and family. It was easy to forget that it wasn't always like this, that there had been a time when things seemed so uncertain, so broken. But here she was, standing on the threshold of her future, full of hope. "Do you think I did okay?" I asked softly, my voice betraying the doubt I hadn't realized I was still carrying. "Did I give her everything she needed?" Grace's eyes softened and she pulled me into a hug. "You gave her everything, May. You gave her love, strength, and a family. That's more than enough." I hugged her back, the comfort of her arms around me a balm for all the years of pain I had buried deep inside. There was no going back. The past was a shadow that would always follow me, but it didn't have to define me. It didn't have to dictate how I lived my life moving forward. We stood there for a few more moments, watching as Lily danced, her joy contagious. I couldn't help but laugh as she twirled around, her dress catching the light like something out of a dream. It felt like everything had come full circle, like this day was both an ending and a beginning. And in a way it was, a new chapter for Lily, and for me. As the night wore on and the guests began to filter out, I found myself standing by the door again, greeting everyone as they left. It was quieter now, but the energy was still alive, still buzzing in the air. Maggie had long since slipped away, her role in the day over. She had stepped back, as promised. And for the first time, I didn't feel her presence hanging over me like a storm cloud. The last few guests had gone, and I was alone in the empty hall, the faint music still playing in the background. I walked slowly through the space, taking it all in. The flowers that had been so carefully arranged, the tables that had been set with such thoughtfulness, the memories that had been created in this place. This was Lily's day, but it was also a day of healing, a day of reclaiming what had been lost. I heard footsteps behind me again, and I turned to see Lily walking toward me, her eyes shining with emotion. She was glowing, not just from the joy of the day, but from something deeper. I could see it in her, this quiet strength, this peace that radiated from her. "Mom," she said softly, "thank you." I felt the tears welling up in my eyes again, but I didn't fight them. I didn't need to. This moment, this one simple, beautiful moment was all I had ever wanted for her. She was happy. She was whole. And that was enough for me. "You don't have to thank me, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick. "I'm just so proud of you. You've always been the best part of me." Lily wrapped her arms around me, holding me tightly. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too," I whispered, holding her back. "You've made me proud. I can't imagine anything better than this." We stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, letting the silence of the night settle around us. The past may have shaped us, but it didn't define us. And in that moment, I realized that I had finally let go of the hurt, the anger, the betrayal. I had released it all, and in doing so, I had given myself the freedom to move forward. It wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about revenge. It was about healing, about finding peace in the middle of everything that had tried to break me. And I had found that peace right here, in this moment with my daughter. As we pulled away, Lily smiled at me. "I think I'm ready for this next chapter," she said, her voice full of excitement. I smiled back, my heart swelling with love. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. The night was quiet now, the final echoes of the celebration fading into the distance. And as I stood there, holding Lily in my arms, I knew that the future was full of possibilities. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Would you have handled the situation like I did, or would you have taken a different path? Can we truly let go of the past, or is it something that always lingers in the background? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartfelt reflections and life lessons. Thank you for listening to my journey.